So I think I can introduce myself. My name is Gavi. I use she, her pronouns. Remy and I co-founded Zumwalt Acres together. Our dad grew up in the house we're in now. It's our family's farm. Um, I would be a junior at Yale this year, but I'm on a leave of absence. So I will be going back to New Haven for school again starting next fall. And I'm studying mechanical engineering as well as earth and planetary science. And here at Zumwalt Acres, I sort of oversee everything that's going on, work with all the different groups, and have a focus in the scientific research that we do, conducting field trials, work a lot on like grants and finance management, and agroforestry, farm planning. Yeah, but a bit of everything.
Yeah, I'm Remy. I use she, her, hers pronouns. Like Avi said, we co-founded Zumwalt Acres together. So I also really do get to do a bit of everything, which is really awesome. I do a lot of research with Gavi, but I also do educational outreach and work with our wonderful communications and media and apprenticeship coordinators, and get to do a lot of grant writing. And a lot of helping out with our horticultural and agroforestry planning. And yeah, if I wasn't here, I would be a junior at Middlebury in Vermont studying neuroscience and dance. And I'll turn it over to these fabulous people over here.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm an apprentice here this spring. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a junior at McGill University in Montreal, and I've been doing classes while being here, which has been an interesting experience. And I am the communications and apprenticeship coordinator here. With Lily, we work on that together.
Hi, I'm Lily. I use she, her, hers pronouns. If I wasn't here at Zumwalt Acres, I would be in my third year at University of California, Santa Barbara, where I was studying marine biology. But here I am the community outreach coordinator. So I've been setting up field trips for us to go on, kind of collaborating with some other local regenerative farms and some brands. And then Hannah and I work on the apprenticeship together. And I was also working on some of the biochar research we were doing here. We've been planting a lot of trees with and without biochar. So I was working on planning for planting the trees, and then we've been kind of deciding what measurements we want to take on them. It's been super fun and interesting.
Yeah. Great. Right. So we're gonna jump back in for the Q&A, but we'll turn it to Remy and Gavi for the presentation.
Cool. So if everybody wants to just make sure that their name is accurate in their Zoom room, you can add your pronouns if you feel comfortable doing so, and you can send in the chat your name, where you're calling in from, and if there's any, like if you're enrolled in university or affiliated with a company or organization right now, or any detail that you want to include about yourself, so we can get a
favorite
sense.
root vegetable, really anything.
So to give you an overview, we're gonna we just did some introductions. We're gonna go through our mission, our work, and looking ahead to what the fall apprenticeship might look like. Before we go any further, I just want to give a land acknowledgement. We're currently on unceded land of Peoria, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi peoples. So yeah, like I said, send in the chat.
Great. So there's a lot going on in this graphic, but we hope that by the end of this info session, it'll make a lot more sense. At Zumwalt Acres, we believe in cultivating healthy and sustainable agriculture in the Midwest. To us, this means working to change the future of Midwestern agriculture by transitioning from industrial practices, which degrade the soil, to regenerative practices, which build up the soil. And this brings me to climate change. So we are fighting climate change using research and agricultural techniques, such as producing biochar, cultivating an agroforest, and incorporating basalt rock into the soil. We are also passionate about creating an intentional community oriented around teaching and growing. Our team members learn from one another and from our surrounding environment, and we give back by sharing our findings and working to include local farmers and students in our projects. Lastly, we strive to pursue social justice as we contextualize our work within the broader history and tradition of agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, especially recognizing the history of colonization, racism, and sexism that pervades agriculture in the US. So, like Gavi said, J.R. Zumwalt, our father, grew up on this farm and witnessed the shift from polyculture to industrial monocropping within the span of his childhood. Firsthand, he saw the devastating effects on both the land and the community. Conventional farming is one of the largest contributors to climate change, and it is responsible for destroying our natural defenses, primarily the soil and our trees. As corn and soy fields covered the Midwest, flourishing forests and native plants of prairies and wetlands were ripped away, demolishing ecological resilience. This focused shift in agriculture has also contributed to a degradation of the quality of food being consumed, as well as the devastating reality of food deserts. The impact of industrial agriculture on the local community was also staggering. Sheldon went from having nearly 50 businesses to nearly none. We are inspired by his vision for this farm that began over 40 years ago when he was in college and envisioned a perennial farm that integrated livestock and worked with the natural resilience of diversified systems as compared to monocropping corn and soy and relying on chemical pesticides and fertilizers. He remains a mentor in our work at the farm. We want to help reinvigorate the land, the farm, and Sheldon's community. By incorporating agroforestry, biochar, natural soil amendments, and other practices, we can revitalize wildlife and the entire biosphere of the land. We want to do this in a cost-effective manner so that other farmers can realistically adopt these methods and collectively transform the Midwest.
So, like we mentioned, we fight climate change in a few different ways. For one, we produce biochar, and biochar is a way of burning wood in a controlled environment so that it stores carbon for hundreds of thousands of years. This carbon would otherwise be emitted as atmospheric CO2 when wood or whatever feedstock, plants, whatever we're using would decay naturally. Instead, this biochar stores carbon and can also be used to increase soil fertility and increase crop yields. So soil can both emit and sequester greenhouse gases such as CO2 and methane and nitrous oxide, depending on how it's managed. Right now, the agricultural sector is a major contributor to greenhouse gases, but biochar allows soil to be a carbon sink rather than a carbon source. Here we produce biochar mostly from wood, from dead trees, wood that would otherwise be naturally decayed or burned in an uncontrolled environment, releasing all of that CO2. We've also experimented with hazelnut shells and corn stover and other farm waste products that we have access to. Basalt, that's really been a main focus of my research, especially this spring and going forward. So while biochar keeps carbon from being released into the atmosphere, basalt rock actively captures carbon from the air. So the compound in the basalt rock, which is a really common rock found on Earth, we get it as a waste product from mining sites. So this material would have otherwise just sat in a landfill or otherwise gone to waste because it's too fine to be used as a construction material, which is how basalt is usually used. So instead, we're using it as a soil amendment. The compounds in the rock naturally decay, dissolve in rainwater. Then they react with CO2 in the atmosphere, which then turns into compounds that are stable and flow through the waterways. And once they're in the ocean, it actually combats ocean acidification and rebuilds coral reefs and provides shelled animals with materials to build up their shells. So basalt is a really exciting technology. It's not really explored very thoroughly in this scale of field trials. So we're looking forward to gathering our results as we continue to test our soils. So the last method is forestry. So as you all know, our farm is largely based on agroforestry, which is a way of growing trees for food and fodder. So trees that will specifically provide us with food to eat. And that is a way of producing profitable crops while actively decreasing atmospheric CO2. Agroforestry also promotes biodiversity and healthy ecosystems, particularly because we have an emphasis on native species that will promote the native ecosystems. So other ways that we are fighting climate change include focusing on perennial crops rather than annual crops, using cover crops, minimizing tillage, and eliminating the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides.
Great. Yeah. So our cohort of people that are here now and of people that we had in the fall really brought with them and continue to bring with them a variety of skills and experiences. Our majors really vary a lot, from mechanical engineering and neuroscience to marine biology and film studies. And so we really want to emphasize that when here at Zumwalt Acres, we want to cultivate a community that is full of people who bring different perspectives and different experiences to the farm. At this point, we also are really looking to connect deeper with the local community and with the regenerative agriculture community in Illinois as a whole. And really, we've done this through preliminary outreach to local schools, especially those with agriculture classes, and the fall cohort will continue to foster those connections. We are also looking forward to fostering more community connections in Sheldon, like I said, primarily by developing a community garden in the town. In the long run, we really want to host events and other volunteer opportunities for local kids and students from the Chicago public school system. By reaching out to schools and other youth networks, we seek to inspire a new generation of sustainable farmers.
So for Remy and I, Jewish principles of environmentalism and land stewardship compel our work in regenerative agriculture and combating climate change. This season at the farm, we celebrated Jewish holidays, such as the spring harvest holiday of Passover. We observe Shabbat every Friday through Saturday. On Friday nights, this looks like a big dinner with Jewish singing and ritual, kind of however we're feeling. Sometimes they're more elaborate than others. On Saturdays, we rest, we take the full day off of work, we try to minimize screen time. And we really see both our life and our work here intersecting with Jewish practices. For example, during Passover this year, we created our own environmentally focused Haggadah. You can check it out on our website. And a Haggadah is the guiding text for a Passover Seder. We held 2 meaningful festive meals, known as Seders. We led them each night. 2 of our community members took lead on that, and we really all participated and had a really great time. We also encourage apprentices to bring any faiths or spiritualities to the farm. So this might mean like customs, practices, traditions that you're used to practicing that you want to share with the group, but it can also mean approaches to land stewardship that feel meaningful to you that you want to share and perhaps put into practice on this land. We know that we have so much to learn from different faiths about how we can imagine our relationship to the land in different ways. And while our community is rooted in Judaism, drawing from Jewish teachings on land stewardship is really important. And we also celebrate all identities and know that we are already implementing agricultural practices that stem from other cultures. In particular, we want to recognize that many of the farming practices we use, such as agroforestry and biochar, permaculture, have a rich history in other cultures around the world on this land. And we really appreciate all that we have to learn from that. We're also cognizant of the prevailing narrative around regenerative farming practices as a sort of new concept to fighting climate change. And when the reality is that Indigenous communities have been practicing techniques such as agroforestry and other forms of sustainable agriculture for much longer than industrial farming has actually been around. So one way that we take extra care to appreciate and recognize this is holding weekly discussions. Each week we have a rotating discussion facilitator, so we can contextualize our work within the broader historical and cultural context of agriculture, and we can talk about things that are making us uncomfortable, things that we're really proud of, how we can do better. Another thing to note is that our community is really a priority. I think that should be really clear. We find that we get more done and have more fun doing it when we put in that extra effort to facilitate open communication. So in addition to this weekly conversation about the context of agriculture, we also have a weekly conversation, a weekly community meeting where we can get everything out in the open, really share our needs, be honest, recognize what's working, what's not working, so that problems don't build up. Yeah, so we have a combination of outside and inside work at Zumwalt Acres. The outside work is really exciting, really fun. I think it's really great to have a balance though. So some of the cool things we've done so far, we've seeded more than 50 flats in our greenhouse. A lot of the little plants are starting to come up. We've built and planted 30 raised beds, planted a food forest and shelter belt with over 70 fruit trees and berries, which we thin and weed and harvest. We've established a compost and vermicompost system. We've burned biochar. We put down 132 metric tons of basalt on our corn and hay fields in our field trials. Inside, we work on writing grants. We designed our website that we keep up to date with blog posts and photos. We work with our partners such as Chicago Environmental Educators, which is a nonprofit in the Chicago region that provide educational programming to schools who wouldn't otherwise have access to in the Chicago public school system. We also work with the Savannah Institute, which is a regional nonprofit dedicated to advancing agroforestry. We've raised over $6,000 in donations, and we all created and managed the Zumwalt Acres budget together. There was a lot of upfront work these first couple of seasons to get an organizational budget underway. Hopefully that'll be a little easier for you all in the fall to manage. And we're working on building a self-sustaining apprenticeship program, especially recognizing that Remy and I aren't going to be living here next fall. After hours, so our work hours are generally 9 to 5. It is a farm, so things do pop up after hours and in the evenings and weekends or early mornings sometimes, like tending to the goats or if things aren't planted and the rain is coming. But generally, we try to keep that time limit so that we can respect everybody's free time in the evenings and weekends. And we do a lot of fun things. We go on bike rides, cook beautiful dinners, explore the woods, watch movies, play games, all those sorts of things, whatever you all want to do out here in rural Illinois. Also, just an important note, as we sort of mentioned, our dad, JR, he comes down about once a week, especially when there are like bigger projects to get done outside. He teaches us how to use equipment, helps make sure that things are going smoothly, helps us make plans for the farm's agricultural systems. He has a lot of background in farming, especially on this land in particularly, and is super helpful. Yeah. Some people here are in online classes. If you have like a part-time job or like smaller responsibilities, we can definitely talk about how to make that work. It is definitely a full-time job being here, so it's a lot to balance, but it's definitely possible. As Hannah mentioned, she's enrolled. Yeah.
Yeah, here we just wanted to show some of the dinners that we've had together, just because eating together and creating meals together is a really important part of how we build our community. So we just wanted to share some photos. Oh, and another one. Yeah, so just to highlight some of our key achievements from our first 2 seasons here. Like I said, we applied to loads and loads of grants and have so far secured over $60,000 in funds for the farm, and we're currently applying to lots more. We built 30 raised beds covering 6,000 square feet for fruits and veggies. We've planted 86 different crops in our greenhouse and in our many newly constructed raised beds, which we're actually going to get to start harvesting and eating soon, and are hopefully planning on selling some of our produce this summer. We are continuing our carbon sequestration research with our partners at Yale University. We have laid 132 tons of basalt to analyze how it impacts soil health and carbon drawdown. And like we said, we are fostering 4 goats who we are already deeply attached to. These guys are actually our 3 goats from the fall, but the little one in the middle, Chanel, she is back. So we got to have her again, which is really fun.
So yeah, we've done a lot of things, but still a lot more to do. So to go over some of the things that'll be happening this fall and going forward, we'll be caring for our young trees. They're all new and will need a lot of tending to make sure that they're healthy, watering, weeding, all those sorts of things. Harvesting our vegetable crops. We are planting so many things that'll be ready to harvest still in the fall, which is great for fall apprentices because they will be eating well, and also will hopefully be able to distribute some of that to the community and selling it. And we're still working on the plans exactly what we want. This was sort of our trial year. We saw it as a we're growing a lot of food, but not necessarily relying on making a profit from it, so that we can see what works well and what doesn't. We're going to continue analyzing our soil and plant health. As I mentioned, I'm conducting field trials with an advisor at Yale to compare the effects of our different soil amendments. So this will mean taking pH measurements, which is really simple and easy to learn, collecting soil samples and sending them to the lab. We'll also keep burning biochar in controlled and systematic ways so that we can keep clear records of what we're doing and contribute to that field of research. We measure CO2 and methane soil emissions as well. There's also a lot of opportunities for you to develop your own research project. So we really want this to be a space where apprentices can come and explore what they're interested in, because there's so much that we still need to learn about regenerative agriculture. So whether that's focused on biochar, basalt, or agroforestry, or anything else that seems relevant, we are really happy to work with you to make that possible. We've built relationships with tons of researchers who are excited to support our work with equipment and advising, and we can help connect you with those people. Because in order to make this replicable for other farms, we need to keep really clear records of what we're doing and how it's working and why others might want to try it. Mm-hmm. We've developed a wide network of other farmers, educators, scientists, students, communities that I mentioned. And we want the next cohort to become a part of those communities. And it's really exciting to meet new people in that way. To share a passion for sustainable food is an automatic way to connect with all of these experts and learn from them. And you will be able to teach them as well. So you'll continue to foster those relationships and develop new ones. We really rely on our network to turn to for advice when we have questions or need inspiration. We were new to basically all of this when we started last fall, and it has been this network of random professors and farmers who have got us to where we are today. So you'll be sending emails and setting up calls, and when it's safe to do so, meetings and visits, both here at our farm and to other farms and to whatever research centers or community centers or whatever it might look like. And then, of course, you will be building a community, an intentional living community with other apprentices who are here at the time, as well as connecting with past apprentices. Our alumni network is really important, and we'll have a liaison structure so that you can be deeply connected with the people who've already experienced this, who will be able to help you navigate. And it doesn't take up a negligible amount of time to really build a strong community where everyone feels connected with one another in one way or in one way or another, where everyone feels they can communicate openly, express their needs, have meaningful conversations about what we're doing here and why, taking care of the physical space we are in. These are all things that we will all be a part of.
Definitely. And so just what you all will bring, so a commitment to our mission and our community. really this all works because of all of you and because of the people who believe in us and believe in the work that we do. And together we're just building a strong community that can tackle anything. A can-do attitude. We have a weekly Monday morning meeting to plan out the upcoming week in as much detail as we can, but a lot of unexpected things pop up, and so we need people who are just always ready, and a clear sense of your own boundaries and needs. This ties back to what Gabi was saying about building an intentional living community. It's so incredibly rewarding and amazing. But living with 6 to 10 other people in rural Illinois means that you're spending all of your time together with those same people. And so it really requires knowing kind of what your living needs are and what kind of boundaries you need to create in order to make sure that you feel really happy and content. Direct communication in the same vein, just being really important to articulate to one another when we feel like those boundaries are not being respected or honored, or if we feel like we need to reevaluate or add to our community guidelines. Just all of those avenues of communication need to be really clear and really strong. A self-directed, so me and Gabi are really the leaders of this group, but we really leave it to all of our apprentices. Like, all of our apprentices really run the show. It's all up to you all. We all kind of lead everything. And so you'll be structuring your own time, and you'll be kind of coming up with how you want to get done what you need to get done on a daily basis. And also, but you won't be on your own, and we'll all be doing that collectively. Awareness of the pandemic, lastly. So just having a lot of caution around the pandemic, just because we value the safety and well-being of our community above all else.
So we hope that you'll gain a lot from this experience as well. In a time when finding job opportunities that actually allow you to get your hands dirty are few and far between, with COVID going on and everything, we recognize that there's a lot of virtual work happening, and we hope that this is an opportunity where you can spend your whole day outside working with other people, living with other people, and really feeling the tangible parts of a working job. And for those with backgrounds or interests in science, we have, like I mentioned, lots of opportunities for you to conduct research. I also will be continuing my field trials remotely, and so there will be plenty of opportunity for collecting soil samples and helping out with that project. And again, yeah, I would love to work with any of you all in developing your own research projects. If that's interesting. That can also be a good way to secure funding. We'll talk a little bit more about that during the last slides. But yeah, there's this farm is really, there are endless opportunities for you to try out ideas that you're excited about, whether that's like actually trying out a new crop that you're interested in, new farming methods. Jessie, one of our apprentices, has been fermenting banana peels and trying it on our crops. We're really excited to see how they do. But yeah, or it can be like communities, like oriented things. One of our apprentices, Sophia, started like an Olympics between groups of the apprentices. So many different ways that you can, experiment. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we've built up a network of professors and researchers, nonprofit leaders who are excited to work with us. So we hope that you will be able to engage with those experts and learn from them. We want Zumwalt Acres to be a place that really gives back to the Sheldon community and feels like we are a part of a broader rural community. So we've begun to build those connections already, and we hope that you all will feel connected similarly. And a loving community is really the real reason we're all here. This place is magical, I think, and it will bring out the magic in the community if you let it.
Great. So just a little bit more of the nitty-gritty details. At this time, because we're such a brand new organization, we have limited funding. However, we can provide stipends to offset the cost of living to apprentices on a financial need basis. In addition, we will absolutely work with applicants to identify and apply to external sources of funding, especially like different colleges and universities often have funds that we can draw from, but there's also a lot of other ways that we can help you secure funding. Ultimately, we are working to become a financially solvent entity so that we can fund the living expenses of every apprentice here. At this time, though, we prioritize making this opportunity as accessible as possible by allocating funds to apprentices on a need basis.
Mm-hmm. So just to clarify a little bit about like the cost of living, we'll ask apprentices much later on in the process, once we finalize our cohort, like what their funding needs are. And that might mean the full $400 a month need to be covered in order for you to be able to come here. It might mean like partial, whatever that looks like. And we'll work with each apprentice individually to make sure that financial need is not a barrier to your participation in the program. But again, we have limited funds at this point, so we need to make sure that it is within our budget and can best support each of our apprentices. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now we want to open up this floor for any questions that you might all have. Hannah and Lily are going to pop back in to help out with those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to say thank you all again for being here and for listening.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any questions or just ask them in the chat if you're more comfortable.
I had a quick question if I could go, just about you guys' funding and grant writing. Do you see this being something where in the future you guys could have enough profit to kind of see this as a self-sustaining farming community without grant writing, or do you think that will always be sort of a part of this process, along with getting more equipment and that sort of stuff? Where do you see, like, once you guys get more established, the sustainability with turning a profit, and if that's kind of important to you, or if that's more of like a secondary, source, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really great question and something that we definitely talk a lot about here. We are hoping that ultimately the produce that we sell from the farm and the value added products that we sell will be able to sustain the farm itself. But ultimately it probably will still be a bit of a hybrid where we're still applying to grants to support the work of our apprentices and the community outreach that we do and our research that we conduct here. But yeah, we are hoping that using the products that we sell, we can be a financially solvent organization.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question about the application and just like what's involved in that whole process.
Yeah. So, hi. So we have an application that you can find on our website right now. And it's a series of short essay questions just for us to get to know you better, get to know like what you're looking for from the experience, and what you can bring to the table here. And then from there, we'll ask people for interviews, and we'll have like a short interview with a couple members of the team, so that both of us can get to know each other and like what our expectations are. And that we'll have interviews, like the application ends on May 3rd, and then we'll have interviews for the following a few weeks after that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully about like around the end of May is when like the fall cohort will start to be finalized.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also option to like stay over for fall and spring, and that can be specified in the application.
Okay, I have one more question. You mentioned like connecting apprentices with like grants and funding from like schools? If you're not a college student anymore, is there still like funding out there for you to maybe cover some of the cost of living?
Yeah, we've found some. It's definitely more challenging, but it's definitely possible. Like in our experience, just this term, we've definitely found a few grants that were possibilities, but it is more challenging. So I guess it's kind of on a case by case basis. Definitely, like for research, it's easier to find more specific grants to pursue like a specific project. But if you're less interested in the research side, it's not off the table. We'll help you look for those. And if not, if like we are committed to providing funding if that is necessary.
Yeah, we also have like grants that support the apprenticeship program as a whole. And we have fundraisers. So we have like money that we can pull from to help people fund their stay.
Yeah. And I will also say like grants that we can apply to, that we can help you find, are often like based on just like your individual special interests or identities that you're bringing to the farm. So there definitely are options for grant funding that are outside of institutions.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering what some of your like favorite successes of the cohort model and the apprenticeship have been, and also maybe one or two of like the challenges.
Personally, my favorite aspect of just like the cohort and apprenticeship model is that specifically more like the cohort model is all of the learning pretty much is done like communally, and we're all learning from one another. We have, JR, who is a mentor to us, and he answers so many questions and provides so much help and is a great resource. But most of what I've learned has come from Remy, Gavi, Hannah, and the rest of our group. And that has been a really special way for me to learn. And I found out that it's the way that I like to learn the best.
Yeah, and I can add to that, like when we decide we're going to do a project, it's kind of just all hands on deck, and everybody gets to like get their hands dirty and try out an idea they might have. So I never had any farming experience before I came here, but I am like a really active member in like all of the outdoor work, and have been able to like really feel like I understand how to like do an entire planting process just by like learning from everybody else here, from looking stuff up, from asking questions, from like reading passages in books. And it's really cool to see that knowledge get put into work.
It allows everyone like the opportunity to be a leader, which is really special.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You can also always email us any questions at zumwaltakers@gmail.com. So feel free to email us anytime. We'll get back to you.
I can also just put the next slide back for the details on application deadline. Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you all
so
so
much.
much.
It's really nice to